Hi, today we're going to look at simplifying imaginary numbers. Um, when we think of the imaginary numbers, basically you're going to be dealing with something with i's. You're going to be dealing with problems you can't normally solve, like square root of -2 if you put it in a calculator, come up with an error message. And we're gonna kind of tap into what we know about square roots and splitting problems up. So first problem. Square root of -16. So since I can't do that negative, I have to break the problem up into two parts. I'm going to break it up into square root of 16 and square root of -1. Because when I multiply those two things together, I still get square root of -16. But when I see that 16, now I can do that. I know I'm going to get a 4. Something else that we now need to know, whenever you have the square root of a -1, it will always equal I. Square root of -1 always equals I. So this now simplifies down to just plain old I. Okay, what about that -50? So let's split that up. Now, I'm not going to split up into two numbers, but I'm going to split it up into three. And those three numbers are going to be 25 and 2. That gives me the 50. But then I'm going to put that -1 in there to give us the -50. And I want to break down each one of these. Square root of 25 is going to be 5. Now be careful of this order that I'm going to go in. I'm going to jump in over here. Square root of -1 is going to be I. Square root of 2 I can't do, and I'm going to leave it. So when we put our answers in order, it always wants to be number, variable, i's, and then radical, and go in that same order again. But it's always going to be the number and then the variable and then I before the square root. So 12. Let's do that. We're going to break that up into three parts. We're going to say 4, 3, -1. Square root of 4 gives us 2. Square root of -1 gives us I. Square root of 3 stays put. Can't do anything with. So that's simplifying with that square root. What about when we don't have square roots and we're just dealing with i's and all that stuff? Well, let's multiply together like you would any other number and variable. So 3 times 4 gives us 12. I times I is going to give us I squared. But we need to go back to our simplifying rules with i's. And when we have an I squared, instead of that, we're going to put a -1. So this now says 12 times -1, which is -12. If you put a negative in there, doesn't matter. If you change the way you write multiplication, instead of a dot and you have parentheses instead, again, doesn't matter. -5 and +3 gives us -15. I and I squared. The only difference now is we're going to say -15 times -1, which now gives us a +15. And what if we have three terms that we multiply together? Well, same rules. 2 and 5 gives us 10. 10 and -3 gives us -30. I times I times I gives us I to the third power. I don't like I to the third power. I to the third power is -I. So let's bring that down. We're going to say -30 times -I, giving us +30I. Okay. Now, can I take both of these processes and put them together here? Okay, so I know if I plug in a calculator, I can't do this. I know if I plug in a calculator, I can't do that. Normally when we see radicals, sometimes we think, well, let's put them together. You could multiply -4 and -9 together and come up with a +36, the square root of +36 that I can do. However, I miss the whole negative thing, so I can't. So what I have to do is simplify that, and then put your answers together. So let's rewrite. Let's see what we get. So 4, I'm going to break up and say square root of 4, square root of -1, times square root of 9, square root of -1. This is going to give us 2i times 3i. Now put them together. 6i squared. I squared is the same thing as saying 6 times negative 1, giving us negative 6. Okay, let's try one more time with having a 3 and having to break down the 8 a little more. So when we rewrite, we're going to get 3. The 8 I want to split up. I'm going to split up into 3 numbers. 4, 2, there's my 8, and then the negative 1. And now my 2, my negative 2 under here, I'm going to break that up into 2 parts. I'm going to say positive 2 and negative 1. Now let's simplify what we can simplify. 3 comes down. Square root of 4 becomes a 2. Square root of 2 comes down. I'll just kind of put everything underneath each other. Square root of 2, and then that gives us an I. Now let's kind of combine things, put things in order. 3 and 2, they're both on the outside, so we'll combine them. We use it. I and I, they're both on the outside. Let's put them together. I squared, we'll come back. And then now I'm allowed to multiply these both together. So I get square root of 4. There's 2 things we can do here. I can simplify I squared, I can simplify square root of 4. So once again, 6. I squared turns to negative 1. And the square root of 4 becomes 2. So one more time, putting them together. 6 times 2 is 12 times the negative, giving us negative 12. And that is simplifying imaginary numbers.